The rain hammered against the windows of the towering glass mansion overlooking the Pacific Ocean in Malibu, California. Inside, the opulence was staggering. Marble floors stretched endlessly. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across the rooms, and priceless art adorned every wall. This was the home of Khalid Al-Rashid, a 42-year-old Arab entrepreneur whose tech empire had made him one of the youngest billionaires in America. But despite all his wealth, Khalid's dark eyes held a perpetual sadness, especially when they fell upon his 7-year-old daughter, Layla. Layla sat curled on an oversized velvet sofa, her small frame dwarfed by the luxury surrounding her. Her curly black hair fell over her face as she stared blankly at a tablet, not really watching the cartoons playing on the screen. Since her mother's death 2 years ago in a car accident, the little girl had retreated into herself, barely speaking, rarely smiling. Khalid had tried everything. Therapists, tutors, trips around the world, but nothing reached her. Mr. Al-Rashid, a voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Margaret, his stern British housekeeper, standing at the entrance to the living room with a clipboard. The new nanny has arrived for her interview. Khalid straightened his tailored navy suit and nodded. This would be the 8th nanny in 6 months. None had lasted more than a few weeks. Layla either ignored them completely or threw such intense tantrums that they quit. He walked toward his study, steeling himself for another disappointing interview. But when he opened the door, he stopped short. Standing in the middle of his study was a young woman unlike any nanny he'd interviewed before. She wore simple jeans and a cream-colored sweater, her light brown hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. No designer clothes, no excessive makeup, just an air of genuine warmth that immediately filled the room. She was looking at the family photos on his shelf, a soft smile on her lips. "Miss Harper, is it?" Khalid said, glancing at the file Margaret had given him. The woman turned, and her green eyes met his. "Yes, Emma Harper. Thank you so much for seeing me, Mr. Al-Rashid." Her voice was gentle but confident, with a slight Midwestern accent. Khalid gestured to the chair across from his massive desk, and they both sat down. "Your resume is," he paused, flipping through the sparse pages. "Limited. Only 2 years of childcare experience, no formal certifications, and you're only 26 years old." Emma nodded, unfazed. "I know I don't look impressive on paper, sir, but I've worked with children who've experienced trauma, and I believe I can help Layla. Sometimes it's not about credentials. It's about connection." Khalid studied her. There was something disarming about her honesty. "Why do you want this position? The pay is exceptional, yes, but the previous nannies found my daughter difficult. I lost my younger brother 3 years ago," Emma said quietly, her eyes glistening, but her voice steady. "He was 10. Leukemia. I watched him withdraw from the world before he passed, and I wished I could have reached him better. When I read about your daughter, I saw that same kind of pain. I'd like to try." The room fell silent, except for the rain outside. Khalid felt an unexpected tightness in his chest. "I'll give you a trial period, 1 week. If Layla responds to you, we'll discuss a permanent arrangement." Emma's face lit up. "Thank you, Mr. Al-Rashid. You won't regret this." "We'll see," he said, standing. "Margaret will show you to Layla. Be prepared. She doesn't warm up to strangers." Before we continue with this incredible story, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We love connecting with viewers from all around the world. And if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss the next amazing tales we have coming. Now let's get back to Emma and Layla's journey. Emma followed Margaret through the sprawling mansion, her sneakers squeaking slightly on the polished floors. When they reached Layla's bedroom, a princess-worthy space with a canopy bed and shelves overflowing with untouched toys, the little girl was sitting on the floor, building a tower with blocks. "Miss Layla," Margaret announced stiffly. "This is Miss Emma, your new nanny." Layla didn't look up. Her small hands continued stacking blocks with mechanical precision. Margaret sighed. "I'll leave you to it," she whispered to Emma, then left. Emma didn't speak immediately. Instead, she slowly sat down on the floor about 6 feet away from Layla, giving the child space. She watched as the girl built her tower higher and higher, her movements careful and deliberate. "That's a really tall tower," Emma finally said softly. "I used to build towers with my brother. We'd see how high we could go before they'd fall." Layla's hands paused for just a fraction of a second, then continued. "He liked to put things on top that didn't belong," Emma continued, a small smile on her face. "Like his toy dinosaur, it would make the whole thing wobbly." This time, Layla glanced at her briefly before looking away. Emma reached into her bag and pulled out a small wooden elephant, worn smooth from years of handling. This was his favorite. He called it Peanut, kind of a silly name for an elephant, but he was 7, so she set it gently on the floor between them. Minutes passed. Then, slowly, Layla's small hand reached out and picked up the elephant. She examined it carefully, running her fingers over the smooth wood, then placed it on top of her tower. The tower wobbled, but held. Layla looked at Emma for the first time, really looked at her, and Emma saw the faintest hint of curiosity in those sad, dark eyes. "It didn't fall," Layla whispered, her voice rusty from disuse. "No," Emma smiled warmly. "Sometimes the things that don't belong make everything stronger." Over the next 3 days, something remarkable happened. Layla began to open up. It started small, asking Emma to read her a story, then asking her to stay during dinner, then requesting that Emma sleep in the room next to hers because the house makes scary sounds at night. Khalid watched this transformation with a mixture of hope and disbelief. He'd come home from work to find Emma and Layla baking cookies in the kitchen, flour covering both of them, genuine laughter echoing through the house for the first time in 2 years. He'd see them in the garden, Emma teaching Layla about different flowers, the little girl actually smiling. "She's extraordinary," Khalid admitted to Margaret one evening as they watched Emma help Layla with a puzzle. "Indeed," Margaret agreed, though her tone was cautious. "Though we know so little about her." "She passed the background check," Khalid said, but Margaret's words planted a small seed of doubt. On the 4th day, Khalid had to fly to San Francisco for an important meeting. "I'll be back tomorrow evening," he told Emma. "Margaret and the staff will be here if you need anything." "We'll be fine," Emma assured him, Layla clinging to her hand. "Won't we, Layla?" The little girl nodded enthusiastically. But that night, after Layla had fallen asleep, Emma realized she'd left her purse, with her ID, credit cards, everything, at the small coffee shop where she'd stopped that morning. Panic set in. The shop closed at 9, and it was already 8:30. The mansion was a 30-minute drive away. She couldn't leave Layla alone, but she desperately needed that purse. Emma made a decision. She called the coffee shop, and the owner, a kind elderly man named Lou, agreed to stay open late for her. "I'll get there as fast as I can," she promised. She asked one of the security guards to watch the monitors showing Layla's room, then drove into the rainy Los Angeles night, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. Meanwhile, in San Francisco, Khalid's meeting ended earlier than expected. A business dinner was canceled, and he decided to return home that night rather than wait until the next day. He wanted to see Layla, to witness more of this miraculous change in his daughter. He arrived at the mansion around 10 p.m., surprised to find Margaret already asleep and the house quiet. He went directly to Layla's room and found her sleeping peacefully. But no Emma. Frowning, he checked Emma's room, empty. A cold feeling crept up his spine. Where was she? Why would she leave Layla alone? He found the security guard who explained that Emma had left urgently about an hour ago, but hadn't said where she was going. Khalid's mind raced. He went to Emma's room and began looking for any clue to where she might have gone, or who she really was. In the drawer of the small desk, he found a folder. Inside were newspaper clippings, all about his family, articles about his business success, photos from charity galas, but most disturbing, several articles about his wife's death, with certain passages highlighted. His blood ran cold. There was also a handwritten list of dates and locations, including the address of his Malibu home, his San Francisco office, and places his family frequented. One article had a note in the margin: "Find out the truth." Khalid's hands trembled. Had he invited a dangerous obsessive into his home? Someone stalking his family, his daughter? He immediately called his head of security. "Find Emma Harper, now, and get her full background. I want to know everything." Within 30 minutes, his security team had information that made Khalid's world tilt. Emma Harper's real name was Emma Hartley. She was the younger sister of Daniel Hartley, the man driving the car that had crashed into his wife's vehicle 2 years ago, killing both of them. The accident had been ruled just that, an accident. Daniel Hartley had suffered a medical emergency, a sudden heart attack, causing him to lose control. He died at the scene. Khalid's wife had died in the hospital hours later. But now Emma was in his house, caring for his daughter, with a folder full of articles about his family, and a note saying, "Find out the truth." Khalid felt betrayed, furious, and terrified all at once. What was her plan? Was she going to hurt Layla? Take her? Was this some twisted revenge? He was about to call the police when he heard the front door open. Emma walked in, soaked from the rain, clutching her recovered purse. She looked exhausted but relieved, until she saw Khalid standing in the foyer, his face a mask of cold fury, the folder of clippings in his hand. Her face went pale. "Mr. Al-Rashid, I can explain. You're Daniel Hartley's sister," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "The man who killed my wife." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, you came into my home under false pretenses. You've been researching my family. collecting information, earning my daughter's trust. His voice broke. What are you planning? What do you want? I wanted to tell you the truth, Emma cried. That's what the note means. I needed to find out what really happened that day. What really happened? Khalid's voice rose. Your brother had a heart attack and killed my wife. That's what happened. No! Emma stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. Daniel didn't have a heart condition. He was 28 years old, healthy, athletic. The autopsy showed a heart attack, but it never made sense. Something was wrong with that report, but no one would listen to me. I've spent 2 years trying to find answers. Khalid stared at her, his anger warring with confusion. What are you saying? Emma took a shaking breath. 3 days before the accident, Daniel told me someone had been following him. He was working as a private investigator, and he'd stumbled onto something big. Something involving wealthy people and illegal activity. He was scared. He said if anything happened to him, it wouldn't be an accident. That's insane, Khalid said, but his voice had lost some of its edge. I know how it sounds, Emma pleaded, but I've been investigating on my own. I found out that your wife was driving on the same route she took every Wednesday to her charity meeting. Daniel's route that day made no sense. He was miles out of his way on a road he never used. Mr. Al-Rashid, I think someone made my brother's death look like a heart attack and positioned him to crash into your wife's car. Khalid felt dizzy. Why would anyone? I don't know yet, Emma said, but I found something in Daniel's old files. He was investigating a money laundering scheme connected to a charity organization. Your wife sat on the board of that charity. The words hit Khalid like a physical blow. His wife, Nadia, had been passionate about her charity work. The Luminous Hope Foundation, which helped refugee children. She'd dedicated years to it. You think someone murdered both of them? Khalid whispered. I think it's possible, Emma said, and I needed to get close to the situation to find proof. But then I met Layla, and I saw how much pain she was in, and she sobbed. I couldn't do it. I couldn't use her. I fell in love with that little girl. I was going to tell you everything tomorrow. I swear. Khalid sank into a chair, his mind reeling. Do you have any proof of this? Emma wiped her eyes. Some documents Daniel had hidden, bank records showing suspicious transfers. But I need more. I need access to the foundation's files and your wife's personal records from that time. This is insane, Khalid repeated, but he was already thinking. There had been things about Nadia's death that bothered him. Small inconsistencies he'd attributed to grief and confusion. The police had closed the case so quickly. The autopsy on Daniel Hartley had been rushed, and Nadia had seemed worried in the weeks before her death, though she'd insisted everything was fine. If you're lying to me, Khalid said slowly, if you've put my daughter in danger, I would never hurt Layla, Emma said fiercely. Never. You can fire me, call the police, whatever you need to do, but please, at least look at what I've found. For your wife's memory. Don't you want to know the truth? Khalid looked at this young woman, this stranger who'd brought his daughter back to life, who'd suffered her own devastating loss, who'd risked everything to find answers. Show me what you have, he said finally. They spent the next 3 hours in Khalid's study, going through Emma's evidence. The more Khalid saw, the more the pieces began to fit together in a horrifying pattern. The Luminous Hope Foundation's executive director, Victor Moreland, had been signing off on grants to organizations that didn't exist, hundreds of thousands of dollars disappearing into shell companies. Nadia had been the financial oversight chair. She would have seen these discrepancies. Daniel's investigation notes indicated he'd been hired by a whistleblower within the foundation to document the fraud. He'd planned to meet with federal investigators the week after he died. Nadia told me she'd discovered some accounting irregularities, Khalid remembered, his voice hollow. She was going to present her findings at the next board meeting. That was scheduled for 3 days after she died. Emma nodded grimly. Daniel was killed 3 days before he could talk to the FBI. Your wife died before she could expose the fraud. That's not a coincidence. Khalid felt rage building inside him. Victor Moreland, he was at Nadia's funeral. He gave a eulogy. He looked me in the eyes and he couldn't finish. We need proof that connects him to what happened, Emma said. Something that shows he orchestrated their deaths. Khalid stood abruptly. Nadia had a safe deposit box at a bank downtown. She kept important documents there. I haven't opened it since she died. I couldn't bear to. But if she found evidence of the fraud, it might be there, Emma finished. They looked at each other, an unlikely alliance forged in grief and the need for justice. We go first thing in the morning, Khalid decided. But Emma, why did you become Layla's nanny? You could have approached me directly. Emma looked down at her hands. Would you have believed me? A stranger claiming your wife was murdered? That the accident wasn't an accident? You would have thought I was crazy or trying to scam you. I needed to understand you first, to see what kind of man you were, to find the right moment to tell you. And Layla? Emma's eyes filled with tears again. I thought I could stay detached, do my investigation and leave, but she needed help. real help, and I couldn't pretend not to care. She reminds me so much of my brother in those last days. That kind of pain, I couldn't ignore it. Khalid felt his anger dissolving into something more complex. You gave her something no one else could. Hope, joy. You brought my daughter back to me. She brought me back too, Emma whispered. I've been so lost since Daniel died. Taking care of Layla helped me heal. The next morning, Khalid and Emma went to the bank, leaving Layla with Margaret, who was told only that they had important errands. At the bank, Khalid opened Nadia's safe deposit box with shaking hands. Inside were documents, a flash drive, and a letter addressed to him in Nadia's handwriting. Sitting in a private room, Khalid opened the letter with Emma beside him. My darling Khalid, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. I pray I'm being paranoid, but I need you to know the truth. I discovered that Victor Moreland has been stealing from the foundation for over 3 years. He's created fake organizations, forged documents, and stolen nearly $2 million. I have proof, bank records, forged signatures, everything. I confronted him privately, thinking he would resign quietly. Instead, he threatened me. He said powerful people are involved. People who would destroy me and our family if I exposed them. He said I'd have an accident if I went to the authorities. I didn't believe him at first. But Khalid, I'm being followed. My car has been tampered with. The brakes felt wrong yesterday. I'm scared. I'm meeting with a lawyer tomorrow, and then going to the FBI. This flash drive has all the evidence. If something happens to me, please use it. Make sure Victor pays for what he's done. Don't let my death be for nothing. Tell Layla I love her. Tell her mama fought for what was right. All my love forever. Nadia. Khalid's tears fell onto the letter, the ink blurring. Emma placed a hand gently on his shoulder, her own eyes wet. She knew, Khalid choked out. She knew, and I didn't protect her. You didn't know, Emma said firmly. You couldn't have known, but we can honor her now. We can finish what she started. They took the flash drive to a friend of Khalid's, a former FBI agent who now worked in private security. Within hours, he confirmed that the evidence was damning, not just against Moreland, but against 2 city council members and a police lieutenant who'd been paid to ensure investigations went away. This is bigger than we thought, the agent said. You need to take this directly to the federal prosecutor, and you need protection. These people have already killed twice. Over the next week, everything moved quickly. The FBI launched an investigation. Victor Moreland was arrested, along with his accomplices. New evidence emerged. Records of payments to a medical examiner who'd falsified Daniel Hartley's autopsy and to a mechanic who'd tampered with his car's electronics to induce a heart attack simulation through electrical shock. Both murders had been carefully planned to look like an accident and a medical emergency. The story exploded in the media. Khalid gave one interview, standing beside a photo of Nadia, speaking about her courage and dedication to justice. Emma stood in the back of the room, watching, knowing her brother's name had finally been cleared. But through it all, Khalid's focus was on Layla. One evening, after the worst of the media storm had passed, Khalid found Emma and Layla in the garden. The little girl was laughing as Emma pushed her on a swing, the late afternoon sun casting golden light across the scene. He approached slowly, and Layla called out, "Daddy, watch how high I can go." "I see, Habibti," he said, using the Arabic endearment. "You're flying." Emma slowed the swing, and Layla jumped off, running to hug her father. Then she looked up at both of them with serious eyes. "Emma told me about her brother," Layla said, "and you told me more about Mama's work. They were both heroes, weren't they?" Khalid knelt down to his daughter's level. "Yes, my love, they were. Then we should remember them by being brave too," Layla said with the simple wisdom of children. "Right." Khalid looked at Emma over his daughter's head, and something passed between them. Understanding, respect, and something deeper. "Right," he agreed. 2 months later, the trial had concluded with convictions. The Luminous Hope Foundation was restructured with proper oversight, continuing Nadia's work legitimately. Emma had become Layla's permanent nanny, though their relationship had evolved into something more like family. One evening, after putting Layla to bed, Emma and Khalid sat on the terrace overlooking the ocean. The past months had been intense, filled with legal proceedings, therapy sessions for Layla, and long conversations as they processed their grief together. "I keep thinking about what your wife wrote," Emma said, "that she fought for what was right, and Daniel did too. They should be here." "Yes," Khalid agreed. "They should, but they left us with something important, the truth. and each other. Emma looked at him in surprise. When you came into our lives, you were a stranger with secrets, Khalid continued. You could have been anyone, but you turned out to be exactly what we needed. Someone who understood loss, someone brave enough to seek justice, someone who loved my daughter without reservation. Khalid, Emma started, but he continued. I'm not saying this is simple, or that we rush into anything. We're both still healing, but I want you to know that you're not just the nanny anymore. You're not just Daniel's sister or part of the investigation. You're someone I trust, someone I admire, someone who's become essential to both Layla and me. Emma's eyes glistened with tears. I came here looking for answers about my brother. I never expected to find a family. Life gives us what we need in the strangest ways, Khalid said softly. Nadia would have liked you. She would have been grateful that you're taking care of our daughter. I'll always take care of her, Emma promised. And you? They sat in comfortable silence, watching the waves crash against the shore. Inside, Layla slept peacefully, no longer haunted by nightmares. The house that had once been a mausoleum of grief had slowly transformed into a home again. 3 months later, Emma officially adopted Khalid's last name, not through marriage, but through Khalid's formal petition to have her recognized as Layla's legal guardian alongside him, a symbolic gesture that made their bond official. The little girl had 2 names she called Emma now. Sometimes Emma, but increasingly, tentatively, Mama Emma. The first time Layla used that name, all 3 of them had cried. Tears of loss and healing, grief and hope, endings and new beginnings. A year after that rainy night when Emma forgot her ID and Khalid discovered her true identity, they held a memorial ceremony in the garden. Flowers for Nadia and Daniel, photos of them both, and a stone bench installed with an inscription. Those who fight for truth leave a legacy of courage. Khalid Al-Rashid and Daniel Hartley, forever remembered, forever loved. Layla placed flowers on the memorial, then took Emma's hand and her father's hand, connecting them all. They brought us together, the little girl said with the profound understanding children sometimes possess. Even though they're gone, they gave us each other. Khalid looked at Emma, and in that moment they both understood that sometimes the most painful losses lead to the most unexpected blessings. Sometimes the people who seem like strangers carry the keys to healing we didn't know we needed. Yes, Habibti, Khalid said, squeezing both their hands. They gave us the greatest gift of all, family. As the sun set over the Malibu coast, casting the sky in shades of gold and rose, 3 people who'd been broken by tragedy stood together, whole again through truth, courage, and love. The past couldn't be changed, but the future, built on the foundation of those they'd lost, stretched before them full of possibility. Emma had come seeking justice for her brother. She'd found it, but she'd also found something she hadn't been looking for, a place where she belonged, a child who needed her, and a man whose quiet strength matched her own. And Khalid, who'd thought his heart was buried with his wife, discovered that grief doesn't have to be the end of love. It can be the beginning of a different kind, one built not on erasing the past, but honoring it while bravely stepping into tomorrow. The forgotten ID that night had seemed like a disaster, but it had led to a conversation that changed everything. Sometimes our mistakes, our accidents, our forgotten items become the catalysts for the most important discoveries of our lives. In the house on the cliff, where the ocean sang its eternal song, a family rebuilt itself piece by piece, day by day, held together by the truth that had nearly destroyed them, but ultimately set them free. And somewhere, perhaps, Nadia and Daniel looked down on the family they'd inadvertently created, their sacrifice not in vain, their love continuing in the hearts of those they'd left behind.